Police, truthful reporting not to target as a state official is arrested over false online coup reports. The legal provision approved last week has sparked protests from the media and has damaged further Thailand's reputation abroad, where the provisions are seen as a crude attempt to stifle critics of the government's handling of the virus crisis. The police, however, over the weekend, attempted to reassure the public that the measure is not targeted at the press or truthful reporting by explaining how online reports on social media can induce paranoia which undermines public health control measures. Amid a challenge to the government over its order last week under the emergency decree to control online commentary which spreads fear or fake news, the police have announced the arrest of a state official who admits that he spread the reports last week of an army coup against the government of Chachoengsao. The news was confirmed by a senior police spokesman, who on Friday, assured journalists in the media that they were free to write critically about the government whatever the consequences provided the reports did not have malicious intent and were truthful. Deputy Police Spokesman Colonel Chachoengsao and Bangkok, announced on Monday that police in Chachoengsao had arrested a state official who was identified as the source of false coup reports at the end of last week, which sparked alarm online and suggested that the military had overthrown the government of General Chachoengsao in set right. The arrest came after the Commander-in-Chief of the Army, General Chachoengsao, right, had the matter reported to the Cybercrime Investigation Bureau, CCIB. Colonel Chachoengsao had earlier assured the media that it was free to criticize the government whatever the consequences provided that such reporting was not malicious and was truthful. Amid uproar among media organizations over the government's move last week to restrict public pronouncements during the emergency, on Sunday, Deputy Royal Thai Police spokesman Police Colonel Chachoengsao announced the arrest of a state official for spreading reports online over the weekend of an army coup. Colonel Chachoengsao said the individual concerned was detained for questioning by the police in Chachoengsao province. He said the man had already admitted spreading the false reports online. Official told police he got the news from someone he trusted and wanted to quickly publicize the news. The official told police that he published the news online having received a report from someone he knew and trusted. He told investigating officers that he thought he was doing a public service by quickly spreading the news online to the public. The arrest followed a complaint lodged by the Army with the Cybercrime Investigation Bureau, CCIB, on the orders of the Army Chief, General Chachoengsao. Police spokesman assures journalists they have nothing to fear provided the reporting is truthful. Colonel Chachoengsao, the police spokesman, on Friday, assured the media that journalists reporting critically on the government have nothing to fear provided what they report is not published with malicious intent and represents truthful reporting. If you share real information, but that information causes chaos to society, that's absolutely fine, Deputy Royal Thai Police spokesman Colonel Chachoengsao said. Army top brass condemns dangerous speculation amid the controversy over the news media regulation. Also on Friday, a spokesman for the Ministry of Defense, Lieutenant General Conchit Travanic, came out to condemn dangerous speculation and misinformation being posted online of a military coup which social media posters said had already taken place. He pointed out that Thailand was already in a state of war with the COVID-19 virus, a contagious disease which can spread to anyone. He said such online reports further destabilize the situation. Digital Economy and Society Minister says dangerous reports which spread fear must be countered swiftly. He was joined by a statement from the Digital Economy and Society Ministry which provided further details of the fake news report suggesting that Prime Minister Prayut Chan-o-cha had been held by coup actors. The ministry said such reports stoked fear, spread paranoia and made the ability of the public to cooperate with each other and government officials more difficult. Regulation a setback to Thailand's reputation abroad. The move by the government to control public commentary during the crisis is seen as a setback for Thailand's reputation abroad. The government, on Thursday, enacted a revised provision under the emergency decree to take action against online commentators including the media who publish information that is deemed to create fear or panic which might undermine its efforts to counteract an increasingly dangerous situation with rising infections and deaths caused by the COVID-19 virus. Order published in the Royal Gazette on Thursday under the emergency decree has drawn a strong response from Thai media organizations. The measure came into effect when it was published on Thursday in the Royal Gazette, having been signed earlier by Thai Prime Minister Prayut Chan-o-cha. The terms of the revised provision were published on the 10th of July and had already drawn strong representations from the main media organizations in Thailand to have the provision revoked or rescinded. The regulation, under Section 9 of the emergency decree, replaces an earlier version which required officials to issue warnings to the offending entity or person before later instituting legal action against them where necessary. The new regulation empowers government officials to directly order measures taken against online entities including individuals or organizations who disseminate information or news that may cause public fear. Human rights activists slates the new provision as a serious blow to press freedom rights in Thailand, says the move is to counter growing criticism. A senior researcher for Human Rights Asia, who monitors Thailand, slated the latest move by the government as a serious blow to press freedom and its own efforts to portray Thailand as a country that supports greater human rights. He clearly linked the move by the government to difficulties over its management of the COVID-19 crisis and reporting by the press in Thailand which has exposed the situation. He said the provision was ill-defined and showed little respect for truthful and accurate news reporting. I think the government realizes it is now facing a credibility crisis because of this disastrous response to the COVID situation, but instead of trying to find better solutions, more efficient solutions, it chooses to gag anyone from speaking about its failures, Sune Fasik said. This provision doesn't care about accuracy or whether it is true or false. 6 media organizations submit a letter to the Prime Minister expressing disappointment and concern on Friday. Representatives of 6 media organizations submitted a letter to the Prime Minister following the ratification of his order on Thursday. This appeared to put into effect a proposed regulation on media output that earlier had drawn a strong representation by them which had been reportedly forwarded to the government's top legal official, Deputy Prime Minister Wisnu Kringam. However, no response was received back. New regulation allows for rapid action to suspend internet access of offending parties and follow up the published provision, published in the Royal Gazette, appears to place a responsibility on the National Telecommunications Commission as well as the Office of the Broadcasting Commission to intervene and order a suspension of services to violating parties. They are also required to assist in a report to be sent to the Royal Thai Police for further legal action including prosecution under a range of laws including the emergency decree itself and the Computer Crime Act where a report is made in respect of online or other published contents. Letter handed to government spokesman promised further social and legal action if law is not reversed. The representations on Friday were made by the News Broadcasting Council of Thailand, the National Press Council of Thailand, the Society for Online News Providers, the Thai Journalists Association, the Thai Broadcast Journalists Association and the National Union of Journalists with a delegation handing a letter in to government spokesman Anachabura Pachesri. The letter, addressed to Prime Minister Prayut Chan-o-cha, promised both legal and social action would be taken in respect of the new regulations which have now received international attention across the world in leading media outlets. The letter submitted makes it clear that in the absence of a substantial response to the submission and earlier representations, further action will be taken. The media group wants to see the government withdraw its 2 announcements made under the emergency decree on Thursday, Announcement 29, the 29th of July and the previous one on the 10th of July last, Announcement 27. Media may have valid legal grounds although the strength of the government's arguments may hinge on the circumstances of the current emergency. The media may have valid legal grounds under the Constitution although the case may center on the right of the government, at this time, to acquire for itself effective emergency provisions and powers to deal with the particular circumstances of the pandemic. In October last year, suspension orders were issued against several Thai media outlets including The Standard, Voice TV, Prachate and Free Youth Online after an earlier order was sought by the Digital Economy and Society Ministry and then Minister Buttigieg Punakanta. After the order to lift the suspension was made by the Chief Justice of the Criminal Court in a 6-hour judgment, days later, Mr. Winayat Chart Montria, a legal representative for Voice TV declared the ruling a significant one. The court also said, specific to the media, that the freedom of the media is very important because it is a principle under the Constitution and human rights. Former minister jailed by court months later. Ironically, 3 months later, in February 2021, the Digital Economy and Society Minister, Buttigieg Punakanta, was jailed along with other cabinet ministers for their part in stirring up protests against the democratically elected government of Yingluck Shinawatra in May 2013, which later led to a military coup. The case is currently under appeal. The successor at the cabinet table to Butipong's Punakanta, Chansantri Nutchagran, insisted, however, this week, that the measures introduced target fake news published on online platforms. He defended the new regulation, saying that previous procedures took too long to have online outlets or platforms closed down if found to be spreading dangerous information. He specifically cited information that may be true but which is presented out of context or without the circumstances being properly explained as an example of what is prohibited under the new order. He said this warrants the authority which the government had given itself to act fast and decisively in such situations. Order published by the government specifically refers to newspapers and other media with broad effect while presented in some quarters as a measure to combat fake news, despite the government's own fake news service initiative launched by the Digital Economy and Society Ministry at the end of 2019. The new order specifically mentions newspapers and traditional media, which may lead to legal action before the courts. Fake news center ready as rights activists push for the toning down of the Computer Crime Act. The terms of the order prohibit presenting or disseminating news via newspapers or other media with messages that may cause panic among the public or has the intention to distort information that causes misunderstandings in emergency situations that affect the security of the state, peace and order, or decent public morals. Police have orders to tighten up enforcement of all emergency decree regulations as part of efforts to curb the spread of COVID-19 more effectively. On Friday, when making his comments and giving assurances to the press, Colonel Kritsana also confirmed that police would pursue distorted or false images or content under the new, stronger terms of the emergency decree, which also include a plethora of other measures designed to bring about stricter enforcement of government rules deemed necessary to make public health lockdowns more effective. Police, on Monday, have already indicated that action will be taken against protesters who took to the streets of Bangkok, Korat and other centres in Thailand calling for the removal of the government and other reforms on Sunday. The National Police Commissioner, General Suwachang Yodsuk, said last week breaches of the decree would be pursued in order to keep order at this time and help minimize the spread of the COVID-19 virus. The tighter control of online information is seen by the police as part of this operation. Celebrities fined for criticizing the government. The latest crackdown followed criticism of the police for earlier moves against several celebrities who were subject to fines for criticizing the government after being summoned. On the 27th of July, Vinaya Chatmontri, a human rights lawyer and Secretary General of the Federation of Lawyers for Rights and Freedoms, took issue with comments by a senior police officer and pointed out that the government cannot be considered a juristic person under Thai law and cannot be a victim under the civil or the criminal code. The top lawyer said that there was overwhelming case law in Thailand to support his position. Police spokesman explains the context and origin of fake and misleading news reports which cause panic, referring to photos appearing on social media last week of drunk people purporting to be people who had died of COVID-19. Colonel Kritsana warned that people can easily be fooled into disseminating false and misleading information which damages efforts to deal with the pandemic, particularly by discouraging frontline health workers or government officials. You may become involved with the distribution of distorted information which creates chaos and discourages people who are working, the senior officer explained. Thai reporters defend the freedom of the press and say it is essential for informing the public and maintaining confidence at this time. Leading Thai reporters have lambasted the government's approach and were clear about the thought process behind the latest moves. Sathakay Yoon, a highly respected journalist, wrote a piece in the Bangkok Post in which he suggested that the government's lackluster efforts to tackle the COVID-19 emergency and its failure to order vaccines which have left it exposed was behind the moves to stifle public criticism and dissent. The mainstream media has to start asking questions about whether the government can handle the COVID-19 situation and if there will be a change of government. Calls are getting louder and they are also from government supporters, he opined in a devastating critique of the government in which he argued that a professional, well-conducted press was a bulwark against fake news and essential to keeping the public informed, which in turn helps to bring about confidence. Mr. Sathakay certainly was, clearly, of the opinion that the bureaucratic nature of the Thai government and its response is part of the problem. He called for a dependable and respected research institute to curate accurate information on COVID-19 but expressed his confidence that professional media practitioners can only help to get the public through what is a challenging time.